Living Corporate is brought to you by The Access Point. The reality is, this is the largest influx of Black and brown talent corporate America has ever had. And as a result, a variety of talent entering the workforce are first-generation professionals. The other reality? Most of these folks aren't learning what it means to navigate a majority white workplace in their college classes. Enter The Access Point, a live weekly web show within the Living Corporate Network that gives Black and brown college students the real talk they need and likely haven't heard elsewhere. Every week, our hosts and special guests are dropping gems, so don't miss out. Check out The Access Point, airing every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Standard on livingcorporate.tv.
Hey everybody, welcome to See It to Be It, one of the series under the Living Corporate Media Company banner. I am Amy C. Waninger. I'm the host of See It to Be It, but this show, if you've been listening, you know this show is not about me, it's all about the guests. What we try to do in this show is we want to highlight the career journeys of Black and brown folks in the workplace. And, I started out doing this just in the U.S., but lately I've been interviewing people all over the world. Recently, I interviewed someone from Australia who works in tech. And just last week, I interviewed an accounting specialist who lives in Toronto, Canada. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing a Latin American gentleman who works as a chief medical officer in the Netherlands. And so I love that the guests have gone global and really, brought a whole different perspective to what See It to Be It is about. But the idea here is that if you are a young person, a young professional, a college student, or maybe you're mid-career, and you're trying to figure out, what do I want to be when I grow up? These stories really highlight all the different things you can be when you grow up and how people got into those roles and their advice for people who are just getting started or who maybe want to move into that space. And I'm really excited to share with you the interview that I have coming up with Jhonatan. But first, we're going to tap in with Tristan, get some career advice, and then we'll come right back to the interview.
What's going on, Living Corporate? It's Tristan back again to bring you another career tip. Let's talk about creating content on LinkedIn. Posting on LinkedIn has two main benefits. One, it helps you to be found on the platform. And two, it helps you to establish your thought leadership and professional brand. When I tell my clients that they have to start posting, the most common response I hear is, I don't know what to post. If you feel this way, I'm here to tell you that content for you to post on LinkedIn is all around you. So I wanted to give you a few examples that can help you get started posting on the platform. When you think of posting on LinkedIn, the most obvious places to start are your successes. Things like new jobs, awards, certifications, licenses, etc. People love to see how your career is progressing and the honors that you may be receiving. Posting your successes is easy, but I'd also suggest focusing on the other end of the spectrum, your failures. Many of us have a complicated relationship with failure, and it does take quite a bit of vulnerability to share these. But we have to understand that failure is not the opposite of success. It's a defining factor in success. Each failure is designed to teach us something. Once you figure out what that something is, share it and watch the engagement flow. Oftentimes, we have to participate in training for work or even as part of organizations that we're involved in. Take the time to share what training you attended and your top 2 to 3 takeaways from it. LinkedIn loves to hear about people's learning processes. If you stay on top of industry news, share your take on it. If you're super dialed into what your company is doing in relation to that industry news and their plans have been made public, share them as part of your post. Maybe even tag some of your leadership team to show how engaged you are with the business. Another thing LinkedIn really likes is a good story. This could be about an interview experience, an interaction you've had at work, or even things like how you and your kids are dealing with virtual learning or transitioning back to the office once COVID restrictions were loosened. These stories can be powerful and provide people with an opportunity to relate to you and your experience. Lastly, sometimes the content is already available on LinkedIn via other people's posts. Take the time to reshare the post to add your insight, thoughts, and opinions. Before I go, here are some quick tips on posting. Start slow. If you don't already post regularly, start by trying to set a consistent cadence, like once a week, until you start to feel more comfortable. Don't be afraid to use hashtags, but stick to no more than 3 to 5 per post. Also, consider tagging people in your posts. This can help create dialogue and boost engagement. Lastly, and I know this sounds corny, but like your own post. It helps trick the algorithm and helps your post to be seen. Having a great LinkedIn profile is only half of the battle. The other half is posting and engaging on the platform to make sure you are being seen by the right people. This tip was brought to you by Tristan of Layfield Resume Consulting. Check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Layfield Resume, or connect with me, Tristan Layfield, on LinkedIn.
Living Corporate is brought to you by The Leadership Range, a podcast within the Living Corporate Network. Hosted by globally certified and Fortune 500 executive coach and leadership development expert Neil Edwards, The Leadership Range is focused on having real, raw, soulful, and accountable conversations about inclusive leadership, allyship, professional development. Every week is a new episode with new learning and new actions to take on to grow inclusively. Make sure you check out The Leadership Range everywhere you listen to podcasts.
Hello, everyone. My guest today is Jhonatan Bringas Dimitriades. Jhonatan believes in the digitalization and democratization of healthcare through new modalities in diagnostics, prevention, and treatment. Jhonatan has worked in the implementation of new technologies in different countries. He directly worked in the implementation of exercise physiology to cardiac magnetic resonance, or CMR, across different hospitals worldwide, such as the Cleveland Clinic, the Mayo Clinic, the Hong Kong University Hospital, among other world-class hospitals. Jhonatan is a certified occupational physician and is the Chief Medical Officer of Corsano Health B.V. Jhonatan holds a medical doctorate from the Latin American Medical University. Jhonatan, thank you so much for being on the show. You are my very first Chief Medical Officer.
Oh, thank you for having me. Oh, how exciting.
I'm so excited to have you here. So let's start there because that's a title that a lot of people won't be familiar with. Can you tell us, what does a chief medical officer do?
Well, Chief Medical Officer has a range of different responsibilities according to the organization. From a regulatory perspective, it can ensure that medical devices or pharma compounds can be accepted or registered at different national systems. From America medical affairs part, it actually conducts clinical trials, and the chief medical officer also keeps constant communication with different societies of specialties for the implementation or to inspire the changes in different protocols or guidelines across the globe.
And so we've heard a lot about clinical trials in the news lately, right? Because of COVID vaccines and that sort of thing. Is your work related to clinical trials? Is that more in the devices space or in the pharmaceutical space?
We are working in the device space. However, we cross responsibilities a lot with pharma companies, especially where we are at right now. We work in wearable devices, so they allow patients to be monitored at distance. And due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we see that more and more pharma companies are starting to need of this remote monitoring of patients at their own homes, because sites are just full of patients with COVID-19, or they just don't have the capacity, or also because of just regulations of the country.
So that's fascinating. So there's a disruption in the pharmaceutical industry right now that's
definitely
moving them more and more toward wearables and IoT. That's amazing.
Yes. All these different new technologies and modalities are really being impacting the world of developing not only vaccines, but also just pharmaceutical compounds in general.
Okay, excellent. And so I see in your bio that you're also an occupational physician.
Yes.
So are you a practicing physician in addition to being chief medical officer, or is chief medical officer your full-time responsibility?
Yes, there's no more time for that. I only do, I am the chief medical officer. I also have other personal, more social ventures. So with a group of Latin Americans in the Netherlands, we have founded an NGO that actually promotes the development of the professional career of other Latin American professionals that migrate to Europe. As a social responsibility, that's also something where I implement my time, my personal time. So that's pretty much it. That and having a family.
Yeah, that sounds like plenty. And so how did you, let's start with the transition from physician to chief medical officer.
Yeah.
What does that career path look like? And then I want to go back even further into how'd you get into medicine in the first place? But let's start with, physician to chief medical officer, because I'm guessing that's not a single step.
There were many steps, and some of them were very coincidental steps or casual steps, and then some other ones were very deliberately made. I think it started from the moment that I moved to the Netherlands. I was an occupational physician in Peru for a long time, and I was working at different companies and also at a clinical service in Peru. And the moment that I moved to the Netherlands, I had to register my medical diploma. So the entire registration procedure really stopped me from being able to continue my practice. And then I had to look for different ways to sort out that gap of like work, for instance. So I decided to just not stay sitting on the couch and like actually go and look for jobs. And that brought me to the medical industry in the way of medical technology. So I started from the very bottom as a sales representative for a medical device company. And then I started to grow up looking for new opportunities. I met some recruiters. So they asked me if I wanted to become a business developer. I'd never heard of that before. So I said, why not? Let's do it. And then I went to business development. From that path, I met more people. One of my clients actually asked me, do you want to cross to like genetical development of agricultural vegetable varieties? And I was like, well, that sounds like something that I have no idea of. So I would love to. And then this actually took me to the world of business development and actually international business. So I was certified and I received education on international business, marketing, strategy, financials, and that all these new abilities plus my experience and my medical knowledge eventually took me back to the medical devices industry, where I was an international sales manager and medical affairs director for Lodi, which is where we implemented the Cleveland Clinic and the Mayo Clinic in cardiac magnetic resonance. And then lately, my last new step was becoming the chief medical officer of Corsano, with all this package of knowledge that I've been acquiring during the years.
That is a fascinating journey. Just starting with, I didn't want to sit on my couch looking for a job as a physician. It's never occurred to me that a physician would ever have to look for a job. And the whole, need to be able to cross national boundaries with your credentials is one I never would have thought of. Not having been in that space, of course, but it sounds like you just made a whole lot of seemingly random lily pad hops and picked up enough along the way that you've kind of brought this all full circle now.
Yes. And although it sounds like it was very random, actually, they all converge at the point where I am.
Yeah, it's funny how when we look back in hindsight, we can connect all the dots, but looking forward, you don't always know how the dots will connect.
You have no idea. I remember that when I arrived to the Netherlands, and then I said, okay, well, I'm going to start working for a medical company in sales. My mother in Peru was completely scandalized. She's like, "You're a doctor. What are you doing?" And my mother-in-law, which is Dutch as well, she was like, "What exactly? Where's it going?" And I just was waiting for a registration, and that registration takes time. And in the meantime, as a physician, you just sit down and wait. But I just didn't want to do that. So eventually, they all understood that every different step that I took me somewhere, and this is where I am now.
I think this is such an important lesson for people who are early in their careers or just starting out in their careers, or even anticipating what their careers might be, because it is so easy to look at where someone sits and say, well, of course that's where they ended up, right? But when somebody says to you, hey, do you want to come do this thing you've never done before in words that you don't understand? The easy thing is to say, no, that's not in my path, right? That's not what I signed up for. The smart thing is to say, what can I learn? And what kind of opportunity is this? And then, see where the path leads. And so
Exactly.
yeah. So where do you think the confidence to do that came from for you? Because it takes a remarkable amount of confidence to say, I'm just going to step out on faith and assume that the ground will be there when my foot lands.
I think when I was a kid and until now, I've been always making little steps towards things that were unknown. Sometimes because of peer pressure, and sometimes because I just wanted to do them and I didn't really think about my limitations more than how can I achieve it. I remember like trying to play the guitar only because the majority of my friends knew how to play the guitar, and then I just wanted to belong to that circle. So I just went and started to play the guitar. Eventually, I became kind of okay playing the guitar, and the same way happened when I decided to move across the continent to study my medical career. I went away from Peru, and then I went also away from my house when I went to study my further education. Then later on, I moved to the Netherlands, so it's even a bigger step. Always trying to do something that I'm just not comfortable with. I think the moment that you find comfort, maybe that's the moment where you no longer are growing. So this is why I always enjoyed being uncomfortable, always enjoyed being insecure, and I am not ashamed of saying that I don't know something. Actually, that gives me the opportunity to learn it.
What amazing advice, especially for young people. Can you tell me a little bit about what drew you into medicine in the first place?
Yes, I always wanted to be a doctor. When I was a kid, I would play with my brother and my sister with little tree branches, and I would act as if they were a stethoscope. Um, and later on in life, I had the chance to go to the U.S., participate at the Intel ISEF, which is the International Science and Engineering Fair organized by Intel. It's one of the biggest, let's say, children scientist conferences in the world. And one of the people that were judges in that conference was a Nobel Prize laureate in medicine, Richard Roberts from the New England Biolabs. And I met him and I got inspired by him. And I was a kid, and it was really cool because I would send him emails and he would actually respond. And for a Peruvian kid that is 14, 15 years old, that a Nobel Prize laureate, that is the director of such a huge biolab, would respond to your emails, that was such inspiration. So I asked him if he could, because he knew me already for some time, he could write me a little reference letter. So then I decided to just apply, and I entered medical school.
That is fascinating. So having somebody that, a chance meeting that invested their interest in you led
I
you to
was
this path.
so flabbergasted. I never expected a person so big in the medical industry with a Nobel Prize to take his time, even 5 minutes of his day, to just reply to the letter of a Peruvian little kid.
Yeah. And I think that's a great lesson for people who are established in their careers,
Yes.
who are listening, right? Invest in young people, invest your time, invest your attention, because you never know where that might lead them. And you never know, you may be the first person who's ever done so, but hopefully you won't be the last. Now, as you think about, you've been a lot of places, right? So you've been, you've lived in Peru, you've lived in the US, now you live in the Netherlands. And I would imagine that, even within the medical community in the US, there's probably not a huge percentage of doctors who are Latin American. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then I would imagine once you get to the Netherlands, the number is even smaller.
Oof, I think I can count them with my hands.
So, and I know that you've done some work, building an NGO or a non-governmental organization. In the US, we call those nonprofits. But can you tell me a little bit about what it's like to build that community from where you are?
Well, I have to say it's amazing. I started in 2019. Basically, it was just a Facebook group. We said I would like to reach a lot of Latin Americans that are probably in my same position. When I arrived to the Netherlands, I didn't know how the system works. Everything was in Dutch, and if it's not in Dutch, it's in English. There's nothing in Spanish. I was lucky that I speak English, but many others don't speak English. And the process, the path was just very complicated. You have to send a lot of documents. You have to go there. You have to go to another office, make so many exams. There are 2 or 3 organizations for registration of diplomas. None of them tell you which one is for doctors and which one it isn't. At the end of the day, you can find so many doctors, Latin American doctors, that are just working as receptionists at hotels or in restaurants, while they studied a profession and they had the chance to become a physician. So speaking with diplomats in the Netherlands and hearing this problematic, I really got very aware of my goal in the society. I value the chances that the Netherlands gave me to grow, and I also wanted to give back to the community where I belong. So I started this Facebook group, and it started to launch. I met really good people to support me. Along the way, we're 4 Peruvians, live all of us residents in the Netherlands. And then little by little, we started to grow a community that is right now above the 1,600 professionals. And we are already expanding to the Benelux, so to Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. And we decided to open this new nonprofit. So we created a website. We started to make webinars. We put them online. We even have our phone numbers on LinkedIn. If you want to contact us, you can contact us. We are there. If I don't respond to you today, I'll respond to you tomorrow. But I really want to just be part of that change.
That's such a fascinating problem to solve for and community to build. And I think it's so it's so inspiring to me when people say, I feel alone. I'm just going to go find people who are going through what I'm going through. And then to say, and let's just fix this for everybody while we're at it, through outreach and engagement and lobbying. And, I just think it takes such a special person to do that work, not just to figure it out for themselves, but to help other people figure it out. And so let me ask you this. Well, actually, before I even get there, I just want to give a nod to the doctors who are working in the hotel lobbies or as custodians or, whatever they're doing, how frustrating it must be to have this incredibly valuable, incredibly needed skill set, and not be able to put it into practice right away. That must be so frustrating.
Yes, I lived it for a little while, and I've met people that are still living it. It's a very complicated situation. As the time passes, you start losing your hope, and it's something that you constantly ask yourself if you made the right decision to come over here. Some people don't have the chance to actually ask themselves that question. We have a lot of Venezuelan refugees, or there are a lot of Syrian refugees here. So in their cases, they didn't have any other chance or any other choice. It was either migrating or staying in the country and then suffering the consequences. So when the moment that they arrive here and they just see that everything they had, including their career, just can't continue, then there's a big frustration. And I think we are there for them to at least inform them correctly, to at least guide them through the process. Of course, there's a lot of effort that has to be placed in there by their side, something that we cannot do for them. But we want to be there at least to tell them how it works and that there is a chance. I always ask Latin American doctors to come over to my webinars and tell them I did it. So if I did it, you can do it. And I think that's a very powerful message.
Absolutely. Do you find that the government and the culture of the Netherlands is as welcoming as it needs to be, or is there work to do there?
There's a lot of work to do. I've been asked many times. I think my wife is Dutch, so she always tells me every time there's an incident, and I tell you like this was a little racist. She says, "Well, I grew up in a community where everyone is Dutch, and I went to school, and everyone is Dutch, and I was always told that those things don't happen in this country." And because I'm not on in your shoes, I could never see it, and it wasn't until I got with you and we got married and you came to the Netherlands that I see what you mean. And I think there's a lot of awareness that has to happen still in this country, the same way as it has to happen in the professional world. Just there's a lot of less, I would say there are less opportunities for people that belong to minorities. I know that the government is working a lot into that, and I really appreciate it from the side of this country. I think this country is always innovative in that. But there's still a lot more work to do. And even if we can do just a little bit to help out, then it's always great to do it.
Yeah. And I think there's sort of a double indignity there, right? When someone is, you think about, at least, in my growing up, in the US, there's this reverence that people have for doctors, right? There's this stature and this respect that people have for doctors. And there's not that ever tramps out the racism, right? Like, I realize like you can be a doctor and still be a victim of racism, but there is like that one place, right? And then it seems like when people then immigrate or they have refugee status somewhere, not only does the indignity of being the victim of racism come with that, but also that indignity of being stripped of the respect of their profession.
Yes, their respect of the profession, their place in society and the community. Yes.
Yeah, and it's heartbreaking, and to think about. I've worked those jobs, right? Those frontline jobs in customer service and hospitality. And, I know not that anyone deserves to be mistreated, right, in their work, but to have worked as hard as doctors have to work to get those credentials and to be among those, those elite professionals, to then have to, be treated without the respect of the credential, right? And without the respect of them being in the majority on top of that, I think just be very difficult. For someone who is young, who is listening to this right now, who, when they were a kid, they used found objects as stethoscopes, and maybe they are not going to attend an international science competition or science conference. What advice do you have for them on how to get started, how to forge a path into medicine, or how to find those mentors that can help them?
I think one thing that I would say is to just try and not give up. Just when I applied for medical school, before I was accepted, I was rejected 3 times, and I think that's something that people has to know, that rejection and failure that cannot stop you. So just because things don't work doesn't mean that you actually have to give up. If they don't work at first, that's okay. There's always tomorrow to try again. So I think it's like a very cheesy phrase to say, like, oh, tomorrow, there's always tomorrow. But actually, I think it's a very fundamental truth in career development and in business. If you ask any person that sells, any person that knows about business development, they always will tell you that majority of doors close, but the biggest opportunities comes from the doors that open. And you have to be patient for them to open. So I think for those young people out there that are actually thinking about studying medicine, that don't know if they are cut for it, or if they are good enough, smart enough, etc. If you have the will, if you have the perseverance, if you really want to, then you are cut for it.
I'm going to just end right there. I think that's the best advice you could ever give young people is, if you want it, go for it. And it will be there if you just keep at it. So Jhonatan, thank you so much. I'm sorry, I should call you Dr. Bringas Dimitriades.
No.
It's
Definitely not.
It's tough. In social media, you get first name basis real quick, and I should be careful about that. But thank you so much for sharing your journey with us, for sharing your stories of failure and triumph, and of just kind of feeling your way through the world to get where you are. I think that your story is one that is absolutely full of lessons for all of us and for young people in particular. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Amy, for having me.
Living Corporate is brought to you by The Break Room. Have you ever felt burnt out, depressed, or otherwise exhausted by being one of the onlys at work? You know what I'm talking about. Hosted by Black psychologists, psychiatrists, and PhDs, The Break Room is a live weekly web show in the Living Corporate network that discusses mental health, wellness, and healing for Black folks at work. Name another weekly show explicitly focused on mental health, wellness, and healing for Black folks at work. I'll wait. This is why you got to check out The Break Room, airing every Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on livingcorporate.tv.
So I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Jhonatan. I can tell you I learned so much. I didn't know what a chief medical officer was, first of all. So it was interesting to get that perspective. But also to hear about, that he was not on a linear path when he started. He was kind of, jumping around to try to figure out, what was he going to do next. And all of those different next steps culminated in something that was incredibly meaningful and uniquely appropriate for him. And so with that, I just want to say, whatever journey you're on, just know that the next step is not going to be the last step. And, anything you can learn along the way that will get you where you want to go, I think is a valuable next step. Now, if you enjoyed this interview, I would love it, and I know Zach would love it too, if you would go out to wherever you find podcasts and, give us a rating. 5 stars is preferred. 6 stars is even better. And you might be thinking, well, there isn't an opportunity for 6 stars. Oh, but there is. That 6th star comes in the form of a written review where you can tell us, what you enjoyed about the episode or what you enjoy about the series. We would love to hear from you. We would also love it if you would share Living Corporate, not just my series, not just See It to Be It, but the whole Living Corporate brand with your friends, your colleagues, your families, your acquaintances, random people that you talk to on the street from a safe social distance. Everybody needs to hear about this platform because we are really, collecting the stories and experiences and perspectives of people whose voices have been ignored for far too long. And you can be an agent of change by helping highlight some of these stories. I look forward to seeing you next week. Who knows who my next guest is going to be? Maybe it will be a Russian cosmonaut, or maybe it will be, a hotelier I'm probably saying that wrong. Hotelier? Hotel manager. Whatever the right word is, you can tell I'm from Southern Indiana as soon as I start to use big words. Maybe it'll be, who knows? Who knows what we've got next? You just got to tune in and find out. And with that, I will see you next week.
Living Corporate is a podcast by Living Corporate LLC. Our logo was designed by David Dawkins. Our theme music was produced by Ken Brown. Additional music production by Antoine Franklin for Musical Elevation. Post-production is handled by Jeremy Jackson. Got a topic suggestion? Email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and living-corporate.com. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.